I'm going to respond to the small channel that came up in my feed, the pleb, because he talks about Bond girls. And I notice it's not just him. Every channel that speaks about Bond always leaves out the fact that the Craig era, that Bond was castrated. Now, here we have Daniel Craig humiliating himself by dressing in drag. And I hope you're listening to this, the plebe, uh, dressed in drag, spewing anti-male rhetoric. Let's hear it. Sorry, get that back up again.
The world has changed, but the numbers remain stacked against us. Women are responsible for 2/3 of the work done worldwide.
Bullshit. One thing we know now is the wage gap is an earnings gap. Men work more hours than women. So there's no way that's true. Also, we also know that women are giving opportunity to the job market and the men aren't. So are they including all the unemployed men who can't find work? I bet they are. But they're not saying that they can't find work, are they? Say women are doing all the work.
Yet earn only 10% of the total income and own 1% of the property. It's not just about money and power.
Bullshit. Women own all kinds of property. How do you explain all these women who get divorced and get their man's house and car? So we know that's a lie.
Every year, 70 million girls are deprived of even a basic education.
This is all bullshit. In an era where men are being ousted from universities and women are giving a free ride.
And a staggering 6.
Look at Daniel Craig here. Look at this lowlife, right? For any modern man to embarrass himself like this, it's disgusting. Now that you know what's going on, plebe, let's get into you and your talk about Bond girls, okay?
Shit in this video. Last year, I watched every James Bond movie for the first time ever. If you want to see how I felt about them, the link to my James Bond review playlist is in the description. But I said I'd do some favorites and rankings afterward. I already did my top 10 Bond villains and henchmen. Those are also in that playlist.
Yeah, I watched those. Those were good.
But today, we're here to talk about a different kind of baddie. The hot girl kind. Behind every great Bond is a great Bond girl. And
No, she's not behind him. You don't know what you're talking about. This is a fantasy for men. The Bond girl is there to pay attention, rub the man's ego, Bond's ego, and sleep with him. And we're supposed to live vicariously through Bond. That's what it is. She's not behind him. She doesn't do anything for him.
Sometimes a not-so-great Bond girl. But we're not here to talk about those today. We're here to talk about the good ones. Well, maybe a couple of the worst ones, too. But what defines a Bond girl? I am not counting every single chick James Bond ever stuck his dick in.
Okay, then that's your loss, isn't it? Because this is a male fantasy. And my top 5 would include the top 5. I wouldn't be limiting myself.
That's insane. For the purposes of this list, I am counting women...
No, it's not insane, dude. You can look, if it's 200 girls, you can still pick 5 women out of that.
With a significant amount of screen time who can be marked as one of the protagonists either most of the way through the film or by the end of the film. For example, Elektra King...
Well, that's a shit criteria. Because mine is she really hot and do I want to bang her?
is not a Bond girl. She is the villain of the movie she is in. Xenia Onatopp is not a Bond girl. She is the henchman of the movie she is in. Pussy Galore? That's a Bond girl. She starts out working for Goldfinger, but switches sides well before the end. Vesper Lind? Also a Bond girl. She does betray Bond at the end, but she's working with him the majority of the movie. Get it? Got it. Good. I'm gonna approach this list a little differently, because the truth is, I don't remember enough or have enough to say to make a full list of 10 Bond girls. So I'm doing 5. But you may be wondering, who do I think is the hottest Bond girl? This is a pretty separate category from what I look for in a Bond.
Well, then you're stupid because that's what the Bond girl is for. One of your all your top ones are going to be good looking. They're all going to be good looking, as you say.
Girl, the one requirement being that the Bond girl is hot. Minimum requirement for favorite Bond girls is that she's hot, but after that, the ranking isn't based on hotness.
Dude, there's only two. She's gorgeous, and she wants James Bond. She wants you, since he's your proxy. Those are the only two criteria. Everything else is just window dressing.
But my contenders for hottest by pure physical looks, I don't know, almost all of them are fucking hot.
Well, yeah.
I guess if I had to name favorites, Miss Goodnight from The Man with the Golden Gun, Stacey Sutton from A View to a Kill, Christmas Jones from The World Is Not Enough.
Oh, so you're into the blondies. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I grew up in the late 90s, early 2000s, so Denise Richards is burned into my brain as a sex symbol forever.
I feel sorry for you. Because look, I grew up seeing all the Bonds. And you show the Spy Who Loved Me, this woman who you wouldn't consider an official Bond girl, she is a knockout. The official Bond girl can't stand her. Hey, this is gorgeous. There's my fantasy girl. I don't waste my time with all this useless criteria. And by the way, dude, you are virtue signaling, which doesn't work. Because the last video I did, just before this one, is about women's fantasies. And women, when they make their fantasies, they never virtue signal. Ever. They have these same shallow critiques, or criteria, I should say, that they go for, and they just go full on, and they're unapologetic. Now, I'm like you. I used to virtual signal as well, not that long ago, and I've grown wise. It's a waste of time. Get you nowhere.
Sue me. Shit, I'd make Christmas come as many times a year as she wants. Matter of fact, there is only one Bond girl who I know for a fact I would absolutely not fuck. My least favorite Bond girl ever. Melina Havelock from For Your Eyes Only. Because mustache.
Dude, I barely see it. She's a beauty. You would bang her. That's a fact. This is Cope talking, everyone.
This was the Bond girl who has a fucking mustache. Other than her, who are my other least favorites? Tracy from On Her Majesty's Secret Service, who, by the way, is also the most overrated Bond girl in my opinion.
I agree she's an overrated Bond girl. But what she's rated as is being Emma Peel from the Avengers. She was sexy as hell in the Avengers, and that's what guys were going for. That's why they were rating her so high.
Opinion. She's a shitty part of a shitty movie. Oh gee, her and Bond get married? Yeah, after they fell in love during a montage and then he slung his dick all over the ski lodge.
So you're saying he banged other girls? What's your issue with that? He wasn't married to her at the time, right? Why can't he sleep around?
Real romantic. I also thought Jinx from Die Another Day was fucking stupid. My taste in Bond girls is that they be proactive in some way.
She was stupid? How is she stupid? I don't know what you're talking about.
Jinx can hold her own, and somehow she still fucking sucks.
All right, dude, if you can't articulate what you mean, then you've failed. Yeah, Halle Berry, she was peak at the time. She was gorgeous. Right. What it was is they weren't really making her a Bond girl. They were actually kind of teasing making her the female equivalent of Bond, which didn't pan out, of course, because women don't have that fantasy. And men don't have a fantasy. They want to be Bond. We want to be Bond who bangs Halle Berry. That's why it failed, which you can't articulate.
All right, some runners-up. These are Bond girls that I like but don't really have much to say about them. Solitaire from Live and Let Die. The only Bond girl who gets deflowered by Bond, and it takes away her powers. That kind of rules.
It kind of rules. Now, you're very contradictory, as usual. So you're virtual signaling. You want the women to be more than just bangable. but you're celebrating that a woman loses her power when she bangs Bond. Like, you're all over the place. Because you can't be honest with yourself at first. In the first place, that is.
Octopussy from Octopussy, a circus leader who doubles as a jewel smuggler. Pretty badass. Cara Milovi from The Living Daylights. Just a normal girl who got caught up with the wrong people.
Right.
Plus, I get all X-rated for a woman who can play the cello. Any ladies in the comments play the cello? You might hear me say hello.
The whole point of the woman being badass, being a turn-on, is you're being James Bond is a proxy for you. She's such a badass, no other guy's good enough for her, but you're the one guy who can tame her. It's taming of the shrew.
Pam and Lupe from License to Kill, one of maybe only 2 Bond flicks with 2 actual honest and true Bond girls. And I really like both of them. One is an agent like Bond, the other is the girlfriend of the bad guy. And Bond has to choose between them. I dig it. Natalia Simonova from GoldenEye. If this were a top
I was just hoping he banged them both. That's all I cared about.
6 list, I'd probably put Natalia at number 6. Unfortunately, I have OCD and can't do lists that aren't in multiples of 5 unless it's a worst to best list. And I sure as shit ain't doing a worst to best Bond girls list.
Nobody cares, dude. I'm not asking that from you. Okay, so you did a top 5. We understand that. No one's giving you a hard time over that.
Natalia rules. She's important to the plot. She's sensible, a scientist, and proves time and again throughout the movie that she has balls.
So what? The one who tried to kill him was sexier and better looking. I would have banged her first.
Metaphoric ones. Okay, here's the real-ass list of my top 5 Bond girls ever. Number 5, Tatiana Romanova, a.k.a. Tanya, from Russia with Love, played by Daniela Bianchi, voiced by Barbara Jefford. Tanya is easily my favorite Bond girl from the Connery era, which
Wow, she's very plain.
isn't much of a surprise. His era didn't have a ton of memorable Bond girls. It's basically her and Pussy Galore.
You don't need memorable Bond girls. Actually, all of them are memorable. She's a hot chick you want to bang. That's all they need to be remembered for.
And come on, you remember Pussy because of her name. Tanya definitely fits my type when it comes to Bond girls. She's an agent for SMERSH, the USSR's version of MI6. So she's a secret agent, like Bond, who is using a fake defection story in order to lure him into a trap. However, this trap is actually being put together by Spectre, whom her boss...
Blah, 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 blah. None of this matters, dude. None of it. Okay, let's get on with this.
tries to figure out how to navigate every new thing happening to her. And this culminates at the end when she becomes, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the only Bond girl in the history of the franchise to kill the main villain of the movie. She's the one who kills Klebb, saving Bond's life, which is also...
Well, that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as she's not stealing his thunder. The male fantasy is as a woman to help him out and protect him, but not to steal his thunder. That's the difference. Daniel Craig's films, they would have him, you'd have the woman steal his thunder.
Also a big character moment for this person, and completes her evolution from a character being used and unsure of herself to one who's assertive. From Russia with Love is one of my favorite Bond films, and we don't get to have that without Tanya. Number 4, Wei Lin from Tomorrow Never Dies, played by Michelle Yeoh.
To be honest, these weren't the worst films, but they were losing it in the 90s. The 60s and 70s, even the 80s, early 80s, still had the full flavor of Bond. And they were losing it here, right?
Wei Lin is easily my favorite Bond girl of the Brosnan era, another era that really only had 2 standout Bond girls.
What are you talking about? They just have to be gorgeous. You want to bang them.
I'm beginning to see a pattern here. You would think that after the end of the Cold War, the Bond series would throw more Chinese agents into the mix the way they did with Russia, but somehow Wei Lin stands tall as the only Chinese agent to ever rival Bond. And she certainly does, because Wei Lin is a badass in this movie. She's a badass in a way that plays up Asian stereotypes, like of course she does kung fu moves on the bad guys, etc., etc., etc. Her fight scenes look like they're from a Jackie Chan movie.
Yeah, well, Jackie Chan was going all the rage back then. So it made sense. And by the way, I saw this movie and that was filler. Sure, I liked the fight scene, but it was filler, wasn't necessary. It's just to showcase her talent. So it took away from the film. It didn't add to it.
But I like Jackie Chan movies, and I like her.
And here's the thing. When a guy dreams about an equal, a woman equal to him, what he's doing is he's dreaming about someone who will be his helpmate, who stay with him and appreciate him for who he is. That's the male fantasy. But they're rare in Bond films because the guys know in their heart of hearts that a woman who equals him will dump him. Because that's what you see in real life. That's why it's a waste of time having that fantasy. Dude, it's virtue signaling. You're virtue signaling right now.
Fight scenes. And she is probably given more actual fight scenes than any other Bond girl. And every scene she is in with Bond is so fucking entertaining and fun. Their escape from...
Yeah, if you say so. Let's continue on. Get ahead.
A sucker for when the Bond girl is an agent working on the opposite team, and her and Bond have a distrust of each other, but over the course of the movie, they learn to trust each other because of the power of friendship.
Yeah, really? That's weak sauce, dude. I get turned on when some knockout shows up in a bikini. That's what it takes for me, right? And you too, right? But you go on and keep virtue signaling, okay?
And also, Bond's dick. Number 3, Anya Amasova, aka Agent Triple X, from The Spy Who Loved Me, played by Barbara Bach. Agent...
Hey, just a side note. You know what happened to Barbara Bach? She got married to Ringo Starr. And it's not because she's an exception. A lot of guys, hey, plebe, a lot of guys are into lookism, right? They think gals go for the tall guy with the chiseled jaw, but they don't. They go for the man with status. This gorgeous woman shacked up with hideous Ringo Starr, not because he was a good guy and had a great personality, even though that's true of him. It's because he's a Beatle. And then you didn't see much of her because a lot of women don't want to work. Some women really love the career and being the center of attention, like Madonna. But other women, as soon as they find that man that they can leech off of, that wealthy man, they say the heck with working for a living.
Triple X is easily my favorite Bond girl of the Moore era. Triple X, like the previous 2 Bond girls on this list, is an agent working for the opposite team, Russia in this case. But, more than any other Bond girl, she is the one who is the most like James Bond. She has the exact same job as him, but she is also the female version of him. She has a personality similar to his, has habits similar to his. For example, she's a man-eater in the same way he's a womanizer.
Womanizer? Womanizer means that's slut-shaming for men. Plebe? So you're saying that James Bond, a womanizer is simply a man who has sex with multiple women and doesn't pay them anything. He doesn't commit, doesn't become their servant. Know when that saying came out in the 1960s and 70s, the same era as free love. Don't you think it's funny that the era of free love also came up with womanizer? Oh, by the way, guys, he said man-eater. This woman's a man-eater. And I misheard him. I said, she's a man-hater, the same way as he's a womanizer. So Bond sleeping around is the equivalent of a woman hating men, right? And he says man-eater, moron. But I'm not a moron, plebe. I simply misheard. I'm just hard of hearing. At least I'm not stupid enough to virtual signal like you did. So let's say she's a man-eater. I remember seeing this film. Now, it's been a long time. Did she sleep around with multiple men in this film and not commit to them? Then you couldn't call her a man-eater, could you? But again, for you to use a feminist term to slut shame a man, I mean, that is virtue signaling patheticness. on your part.
She analyzes people in the same manner he does. She makes Bond moves. That moment when they meet at the club and they already have the lowdown on each other, that's a Bond move that she throws back at him, and he gets butthurt about it because she mentions his dead wife.
His dead wife, really? So does Bond mention dead boyfriends and husbands to the women he talks to? I don't ever remember that in any Bond film, so how is that equivalent? How is she equivalent to him? You, you are really reaching.
And unlike the first two girls on this list, this movie is selling you on the idea that these two are falling in love, and it doesn't.
Which never works. When a guy falls in love, he sticks with that one woman, and it kills the fantasy. That's why it always gets reset in the end.
Successfully, but with an added twist.
If you're a man of self-respect, you will never want Bond to fall in love or get married.
Bond killed Triple X's lover while out on a mission, which adds a totally different context for her relationship with the man in this movie. Because, despite falling in love with him, she now promises that as soon as the mission is over, she will kill him.
But she didn't kill him. But I bet I'm going on foggy memory. I have to look at the movie, see if she slept with him at the end. So she's in love with this other man, but she bangs the guy she vows to kill. That's a male fantasy, dude. You're so awesome that you're better than the other guy. Right? That doesn't make her awesome in any way. You're basically saying, hey, it's great that this woman has no loyalty to her former lover.
She loves him. She hates him. It's awesome. The Spy Who Loved Me was the first Bond movie to attempt a love story that I actually believed. And it came from the Roger Moore era, which is insane. Number 2, Vesper Lind from Casino Royale, played by Eva Green.
I do like her face, I gotta admit.
Vesper Lind is easily my favorite Bond girl from the crowd.
She's got a beautiful face, but sorry, she just can't compete with this piece of hotness right there. That is gorgeous, right? She's the evil girl who tries to kill Bond, right? She doesn't, like you say, she's not in the whole movie. Doesn't matter. She's top dog. She's top girl, right? I don't waste my time with all this window dressing that you do, right?
Craig era. Almost universally praised as the greatest Bond girl of all time, you know there is no way Vesper is not making my list in some way, shape, or form. Vesper.
Who said that? Well, as you can see from the feminist propaganda, they say a lot of fucking shit, right? So like I say, if you think anything is good of this era, the Daniel Craig feminist era, you're either naive or you have no self-respect whatsoever.
Is the best Bond girl to come out of MI6, so she's the best Bond girl who starts the movie on Bond's side. Vesper and Bond make an instant connection. They plot out the whole high-stakes poker game at Casino Royale. Vesper saves Bond's life. It should be noted that she's not an agent. We see how violence actually affects her, and it does so in a realistic way.
Here's another thing about realistic. Realism doesn't help James Bond. I wish I could remember the YouTuber who talked about this, because I would love to give him credit. But he said the realism actually hurts Bond because the whole premise is fantasy. You start bringing gritty realism into Bond, it just makes the craziness of it stick out like a sore thumb. Right?
She's strong, but not too strong. And she is even the first Bond girl to get...
She's strong, but not too strong. I thought you were all for these girls being badasses. So you're admitting, right? If she's too strong, she takes away from Bond. She steals his thunder. And also it kills the fantasy because guys know in their heart, including you, plebe, that if the woman is equal or better than the man, she will not shack up with him.
Bond to retire. But then And then, this chick is the focal point of the biggest twist in Bond history. It turns
Well, they are castrating Bond, so it's not really that big of a twist, is it, right? They're gonna Bond, he used to like get in trouble with M because he was a badass. He was a maverick who did things his way. But in this feminist era, he's just an angry little man who was lost his family and lost his the love of his life. Then he kills out of resentment. He's just a little loser. And he gets told off. He gets scolded by Mommy M. That's some real castration there, dude.
out she was being blackmailed by this totally separate agency who were threatening to kill her boyfriend, so she stole the money to give to this organization. Bond finds out, and Vesper, out of guilt for betraying this new man she genuinely loved, drowns herself in the most disturbingly realistic drown.
Which would never happen. That's the biggest fantasy right there. Right? Now, let's get into his number one.
Best Bond girl from the Craig era? I lied. Number one, Madeline Swan from
Madeline Swan, the most plain Jane looking woman ever. Right? She's so incredibly unimpressive.
Spectre and No Time to Die, played by Léa Seydoux. A few of you are probably pleasantly surprised. Most of you are probably fuming. We'll keep...
Well, not fuming. I'm more like holding you in contempt. I'm not angry. I'm just going like, oh. Look at this unimpressive woman. Don't get me wrong. She's pretty. I'd bang her. But she's not Bond material. Now, what it is, they basically said, Bond, you are no longer this womanizer. You're no longer getting free love. You're no longer banging all these chicks like all us guys would love. You know? You're not getting variety of the best women. No, you're going to be shacked up to this one woman. And you're going to commit to her. Because I got news for you, pleb. Feminists are for role models. Oh, I should say role models. They are for gender roles, traditional gender roles for men. They can buck the gender roles, but they want us in our gender roles, the serving gender roles. Plebe or pleb, however you say your name. So that's why they basically said, here's this plain Jane, plain by Bond girl standards, for you to shack up with personally, but you're not really shacking up with her. You're committing to her. You're serving her. That's what commitment means for men. It means serving a woman. That's as anti-fantasy as it gets for guys. So for you to say this girl is number one to you, it's just pathetic. It's pathetic because this is what that era is about. This is what this era is about. So for you to say anything good about this era just shows you that you are a laydown and you are a virtual signaling guy who's willing to do whatever it takes to get with the opposite sex. This is pathetic. Anyway, I spit on the castrated James Bond. And I reject it out of self-respect as a man. See you around, plebe or pleb, however you say your name.